Bishop Kevin Foreman, welcome to the podcast.
Super excited to be here with you. It's going to be an amazing conversation. I just got to say, I'm a big believer in creating atmosphere. What you behold, you become. And I like that picture you got right behind you, just the hands of victory. I can't quite see what it says, but I see the hands of victory there. And I think that's important to create that atmosphere to win. Because if you don't create the atmosphere will dictate to you instead of you dictating to it. So anyway, glad to be with you today.
The quote is, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." And what's funny is, so that quote is from Wayne Gretzky,
Yeah.
arguably the greatest hockey player of all time. But
Yeah.
I first stumbled upon it from watching The Office, funny enough,
Uh,
because Michael Scott in an episode took that quote and then rebranded it as his own. I thought it was super funny. And then I actually looked into the quote and looked into the meaning a bit more. And I was like, wow, this quote was actually very meaningful. So it's funny how I
Yeah,
kind of
so
stumbled upon
true.
it.
So true.
Yeah.
I think the simplicity of it, but sometimes simplicity, the simple things are the most profound things. Sometimes there's this old proverb that says people muddy the water so you think it's deep. And sometimes, things sound overcomplicated, very confusing, all of these layers. And really, it's actually super, super, super simple. I've discovered that the most successful people are simply people who, while others were talking, they were walking.
Oh, I love that. You know
Yeah.
what's funny? I was actually recording and I was going to post Instagram reel talking about that very topic and
Yeah.
talking about how a lot of the advice seemingly on the internet nowadays is complicated. And I've talked about it before on the podcast. And the reason I think it's complicated is because people need something to sell. So if
Yeah.
I tell you, hey, Kevin, dieting is the super complicated thing, weight loss, right? The super complicated thing. You need to track your macros. You need to buy this ebook off of me. You need to buy this piece of information off of me. You don't know anything until you buy this off of, what I'm selling. Then you're creating back to atmosphere. You're creating this atmosphere of, okay, I need this person's information because weight loss is this complicated thing. Versus if you just view weight loss as like, all right, I'm gonna eat less and work out more. And
Right. Right.
if you're trying to achieve perhaps the 1% result, right? If you're a bodybuilder or something, yes, you probably need some more complicated advice. You probably need to track macros. But I would venture to guess for 99% of people, if you just want to lose weight and look better, eat less, work out more.
Yeah, listen, I mean, that's the name of the game. And I agree. I think that many things are done for purposes. It creates the need for someone that it's not really a need that's there. And what's amazing is in sales and just psychology, there's the phrase, people pay attention when they pay. And I think some of that is the belief that if this is free and easy, something's wrong, which is a whole deeper level of ideation's easy, implementation is difficult. Excitement is easy, execution is difficult because the execution means I have to actually go do something with what I know, not just keep learning. I think we live in an ever learning culture who doesn't actually execute on much of what they learn.
So how do we kind of push back against that? Like, or do we even need to push back against that when it comes to simplicity, when it comes to this complicated advice that we hear on the internet?
Yeah, so I think it's like this. The joke is I came out of my mom's with a Bible in a briefcase. I have this affinity towards spirituality, this affinity towards business, success, entrepreneurship. Get into ministry at 12, start my first business at 12. By 21, I built Denver's largest Black-owned mortgage company. I did amazing things. We built one of Denver's largest African American led churches. My whole life has been doing things that don't necessarily make sense, that the demographics, the numbers don't add up, the numbers don't make sense. And so I think I think it's three things. One, every person needs to look at their life and see where you've already defied statistics and you've already proven the experts wrong. Because the truth is, everybody's already done that in some area of their life. So now, knowing that, now I have a framework to say that it's good to learn. Knowledge is good. I have a whole Bible college, right? I have a whole school that gives associates through doctoral level degrees. I'm not anti-knowledge or anti-education. However, what I've discovered is that for many people, it is this ever learning, which is really feeding something deeper, which is an insecurity. There's this insecurity that, well, what if I mess up? What if I fail? What if I screw up? What if it doesn't go right? What if it doesn't look good? What if people talk about me? So there are all these what ifs that are really, they come out in a variety of ways. They come out as procrastination, It comes out as self-doubt. It comes out as, measuring 50 times to cut once. But the reality is that, even in all of those measurements, you still cut wrong. And I think using that as a framework that I've already overcome statistics, already beat the experts. Now what I have to do is get enough. And here's the phrase I like to use. Instead of ready, aim, fire, ready, fire, aim. And meaning that at the end of the day, there's certain things you have to do with the little bit of information that you have or the data that you do have. And you begin to take steps forward because you need to see yourself having momentum. You need to see yourself doing something. That's like the guy who says, you know what, I can't. I was talking to a gentleman. I mentor a lot of people. I coach a lot of people from every background. And he says, Bishop Foreman, I need this camera to do content. I said, why? I said, you have an iPhone. He said, no, but I need this camera, the aesthetic, and people are really into the aesthetic. I said, no, they're not. I said, go look at the videos that are trending. People do not care about aesthetic. I said, they got misspellings. The camera's all on their face. You can see nose hairs that make, I'm like, that's not true. I said, that is not true. I said, you have told yourself that without this $1,000 camera, you can't make good content. And I said, that's patently false. And so, one, use the framework. Two, be a person that's constantly taking action. You need to see yourself taking action. And then I think number three, you rinse and repeat. You do the first two over and over again. The most successful people are not the smartest. The most successful people are not the most talented. You can look at this in music. You can look at some of the people who are trending and doing amazingly well in music. They're not the best singers. They're not the best musicians. So what's the difference? What is it? And I submit that a lot of that is just they became action takers. They were willing to do it and not do it perfect, but to do it.
Do you think that your mindset influences your actions or your actions influence your mindset?
I think it's both. I think there's a symbiosis. I don't think it's either or. I think it's both and. I think the more I do something, the more it becomes reinforced to me to do it. Like it's like when people do things and they get away with it, right? We live in a culture where sometimes people do things and they get away with it and they with impunity. They act with impunity. They do whatever they want to do to get away with it. So then you realize these people begin to think, well, the rules don't apply to me. I can do whatever I want. I can say whatever I want. I can feel however I want. I can think whatever I want, and there'll never be any repercussion for it. That's a great way to view how it works is that actions influence mindset, mindsets influence actions. And so it becomes this cycle and circle, but they're feeding one another. So sometimes you have to do it to change your mindset that you can do it. And then sometimes you got to change your mindset that you can do it so that you do it, right? So I think they really go hand in hand. I don't think it's either or. I think it's both and. What I discovered is some of my biggest successes came when I just did it. It stopped overthinking it, stopped overanalyzing it. Quick example, social media. I was sitting at a particular number for around, for a long period of time. I would look at it was, decent number, but I was like, this is not like, it's just sitting here. So to the point where I was like, I don't even want to look at it. Like I'll look at it every few days. I'll post something if I want to. Other than that, I just gave it to one of my team to do. And I was like, okay, you know what? I talked to a friend of mine. He was doing really well. He was growing, in an amazing way. I said, so what are you doing? And he says, well, I just have my phone and I talk. I said, no, you don't. I said, who's pushing you talking? Like, there's no way you're just talking in the phone. And he wouldn't even be looking in the phone half the time. Half the time, he's looking around doing all this. And so I said, so what are you doing? He said, nothing. I just use my phone. I just talk. And he had an Android. And I'm like, everybody knows I'm a pro Apple guy. I'm like an anti-Android person. And it's just a joke in all of our ecosystem. But anyway, so I'm catching a flight. And I say, you know what? I've written all these things. I'll do this, social strategy, talking to this company, talking to that company. I said, you know what? Let me just record a video. I was getting ready to catch a flight. It was a Southwest flight because I was going from Denver to Chicago. And that's the best flight. You go from Denver to Midway, easiest way. I say that because Southwest didn't have the best internet. So I had to quickly do the video because I said it once we get in the air, this thing is not done to go. So I'm in the waiting, in the getting ready to line up for the plane. I do a quick video. And you know how you kind of talk low because you're around a bunch of people. So I'm talking low, looking directly into the phone. I'm like, let's see if this works. I hurry up, post the video. I land. All of a sudden, this one video where I'm saying the simplest things in the lowest tones, looking at the phone, awkward angle, the whole nine, it had like 45,000 likes on one platform. I said, from an hour and a half flight. And all of a sudden, then you begin to see this amazing growth. My point is that I just did it. And then it influenced my actions or my mindset that you can do it. Stop muddying the water to make it so deep. It's not that deep.
It's funny you bring that up because recently one of my best performing videos on Instagram was a 49ers rant. So I'm a huge 49ers fan after we lost to Seattle in the divisional playoff game. And it was like a 3-minute video. And to your point, like the game ended and I just opened my phone, popped open the camera app and started recording. And I was like, being a 49ers fan sucks. We can never win the Super Bowl. We can't ever get to the big game. And I had all these comments. Of course, people are going to, bash on you a little bit, whatever. Sure. But, that's the nature of social media. But to your point, like I didn't really think about it. I didn't create, I didn't do any of the best practices that you'll see on social media. I didn't do a crazy hook. I didn't do any of these fancy things. I was like, all right, I'm going to just talk from the heart. I'm going to be like, if this sucks, being a fan of this team sometimes sucks. I'm still loyal, but this is terrible. And then I'll have other videos where I'll spend, hours trying to craft the hook and create a list of things that I want to say, and it'll flop and it won't do well. So maybe there's a lesson in there that sometimes just not overthinking it, to your point, and just going out and do it is the best solution.
And just do it. I mean, I think it's this recognition that if I'm at it, I can accomplish it. And I think there's so many reasons that feed into why we, think that and look at all of that. And again, same thing. I'm an analytical person. I'm a data-driven decision maker. But what I discovered, again, this is why I started with the first thing, look back on your history. What I discovered is the data never really mattered to me because the data says I shouldn't have won. The data says that I should be a statistic. The data says that, nothing that we're doing and or have done should be working, but it is. So why would I now create a life based on data points when my entire life transcends the data points? And I think that's everybody's got to see that, because if you just look back on your own life and look at your own story, you can see I shouldn't have survived that. I should have lost my mind in that. That thing, I thought that was going to take me out. That thing was difficult to get through, but I did it. So if I'm already living a life that has defied statistics and defied the experts, why in the world would I start trying to live a life that believes that now what they're saying is right? Whoever they might be.
I think even if you look at it in its most basic and simple form, the fact that you are on this earth, the fact that you are alive is I think somebody did this, did the calculations, like a 1 in 4 trillion, chance that you are here in this moment on this particular day. Like just looking at it from that perspective, like I'm here, I'm alive. All the things that had to go right for me to be in this moment right now, talking to Bishop Foreman and doing this podcast, like it truly is a miracle. And so when you even zoom out in its like most basic form, isn't it kind of beautiful how crazy this world is, how much of a miracle this all is?
It's exactly that. It's a miracle. And that simple revelation. So what's revelation? Revelation is how information applies to my specific situation. That simple revelation, it changes your perspective with everything, because everything becomes, well, why be fearful? Take the shot. Like, why not try? Try. Well, what if you fail? You've failed before. Get back up and keep going. I think that very simple thing, when that drives you, and this is no joke. People sometimes ask me, say, Bishop, is your energy always like that? Like, are you always high energy? Are you always? And I am. But the reason I'm that way is because I view life through the lenses, precisely what you said, that this is a miracle. And my whole life is full of miracles. My whole existence is miraculous. It was last year that my mother told me something. There's this story, and it's a biblical story about this woman, and she couldn't have kids, and she prays and says, if you give me a son, this is what I'll do. And I never knew that just getting here, that my mother had actually prayed something very similar, and that there was some complications surrounding my birth and delivery and all that. And that's what she did. And so when I found that out last year, I was like, well, why did you wait all this time to tell me about that? As one day I was preaching a message, and she remembered the story. And, I think everybody, if you go back and look over your life, everybody has some unique thing. You got the macro, but then everybody's got some micro thing to say, this is a moment, and I've got many of them, but this is a moment that shows me that my entire existence, my entire life is miraculous. And so now I got to do something with that besides just pay bills, have babies, and be unalived. I'll say it that way so that they don't mark you, mess with you on social.
It's so funny you bring up that story. That's a fantastic story, by the way, because I always go back to when I was 3. As I was at the pool with my parents, and as little kids do, they're messing around the pool, and I was carrying this huge beach ball, and I was 3 years old, so I was still pretty small, and I had this huge beach ball in my arms, and my parents still tell this story to this day, and I'll get goosebumps, and it's. But I was carrying this beach ball, and I was walking around the pool, and I didn't see the corner of the pool, and I fell into the pool, and I couldn't swim at this point, so I was essentially drowning. And my mom was reading this magazine, and my dad was turned away from the pool, changing or doing whatever. And still to this day, he says, I don't know what compelled me. I mean, he's a religious man, so he'll say, God told me, hey, turn around. But he said, God told me, turn around. There's something happening in the water. And he turns around, and I'm drowning. And he obviously jumps in, saves me, and now I'm here 26 years later. So when you tell your story, when I think about my own story and how much of a miracle it is that I'm here, one thing that I think about, and one thing that I've been thinking a lot about, is this idea of useful thoughts and how important they are. And so, for instance, I tell this story, and I use that story of me almost drowning to give myself, I don't know if courage is the right word, but almost like a higher sense of meaning, like I'm put on this earth to do something great. And people may see that and say, like, okay, that's, that might be stupid, it might be whatever, but it's useful, and it gives me motivation. It gives me purpose. I started the podcast because I told myself, well, maybe I'm here to do something greater. Maybe I do have a message that people are going to resonate with. So just this idea of choosing thoughts that are useful to you. I just want to get your feedback on what your thoughts are on useful thoughts.
Yeah, I love that, because I think I believe everybody gets to keep 100% of the limiting thoughts that they want to have. Like, the one area that nobody else has control over in any way, shape, form, or fashion is your mind, right? Nobody can control that. They can tell you something, but you don't have to believe that. You don't have to accept that. This is the one place where you really get to have control. And it's the one place that most people exercise the least control. And I think I love the use of the word useful thoughts, productive thoughts. I would use life-giving thoughts, things that give you life. And so that whole framework really determines, how you move forward. And so I always examine thoughts, and I said, well, how is this helping me? Because if this isn't helping me, I need to reframe this thought. If this is not building me up, I need to reframe this thought. So many people spend so much of their lives in negative thoughts for a variety of reasons. Maybe something happened in childhood, something happened in life, relationships, here's the thing. Everybody needs to know life hurts. In life, you're going to take some hits. I don't care what's your belief, what's your background, what's your age. You're going to take hits. Life is a contact sport. And you mentioned football. I played football for a year and a half, and here's what got me to stop. I got popped one good time during a blizzard, and I was fullback. It was a handoff play, because of course during a blizzard, the only thing you're going to do is run the ball. And so I'm running the ball. I watched the ball pop out of my hand after that lineman pops me, and I was like, "This is not for me. I better go back to this Bible and briefcase thing, because this football thing is not for me." But the point is that so sometimes people live life trying to avoid hits, avoid hurt, avoid pain. And really, just like in football, you do all that scrambling to try to run the ball, and normally you lose yardage, and you still get popped, you still get hit. And so the reality is we get to keep every limiting thought, every negative thought, every unproductive thought that we want to. So since it's a choice, I'm a believer that I've got to think things that give me life, and I've got to focus on things that give me life. A lot of times in pop culture, people use the term meditate. I'm meditating. Well, meditating just means focused thinking. What am I focusing my thinking on? What is the thing that I'm choosing to do? Which goes back to what I said when we first started. I liked your picture because, again, I immediately gravitate to things that give me life. If you were to come and see this environment that I'm in, there are swords everywhere. There's lions everywhere. There's lions, tigers, and bears. All of that. There's all of that. There's swords. There's all of these elements of a warrior, of a gladiator, of a fighter, because it reminds me every day that there will be a fight, and I get to determine who wins. And I refuse to walk off that field not having won that fight, even if the fight sometimes is just with myself.
This might be a little bit of a weird exercise, but if you don't like it, pretend like you do enjoy it. So we, one thing that I see on the internet a lot is this victim mindset, right? Like bad things, literally to what you just talked about. Bad things happen to you. Maybe you're given a less than ideal situation, and it's not my fault. It's this person's fault.
Yep.
It's this surrounding area's fault. It's, I was
Yep.
born at the wrong time. All these different things, right?
Yep.
Victim mentality. I think we're all pretty familiar with it.
Yep.
What I'd like to do is, like, if you were a therapist for your own self, let's say you were someone who was struggling with this victim mindset and you kept blaming the outside world for your problems. What would you say to yourself? Like, what's the internal dialogue that you would have? Like, how would you pull yourself out of this victim mindset and into this world of control? Like, understanding that you do have control of your circumstances. You do have, right? Mindset is a choice. Success is a choice. Like, you do have choices in this world. So I'm just curious if you could be your own therapist in that scenario and how you would pull yourself out of that victim mindset.
Yeah, well, one, I literally do that every day. Two, I literally do that for me every day, because I think sometimes some people you're waiting on somebody to come save you from you. And the challenge is you spend most of your time with you. So the moment somebody saves you from you, you're back with you. So if you don't learn how to deal with you, your greatest enemy will be your enemy. And so the conversation I would have is this. Number one, so something bad has happened. Number one, why do you think it happened? Okay, you give me the reason. Number two, how do you feel about it? I feel this. Number three, so what are you going to do about it? Because it goes back to this action. And I agree with you about the victim mentality. And I think it's convenient to blame everybody else. Like that's convenient. You did it. It's your fault. It's her fault. It's his fault. It's their fault. And let's be clear. There are some absolute legitimate things where you've been victimized, but that does not make you a victim. A victim is a state of being. Victimized is an action. So just because this action happened doesn't mean that I have to sit in this identity like woe is me. No, not woe is you. What are you going to do about that? How are you going to take that and turn it into something? I think of something when I got into the mortgage business years ago. And I had been, again, remember, started my first business when I was 12. I went to start the marketing department for this particular company. It did not work out at all. And I mean, it didn't work out at all. I mean, it was like, didn't work out at all. And so I remember people saying, well, you should be mad at the guy and the CEO of the company. You should be mad at him. And this, I said, I'm not doing that. I said, why would I do that? I said, I don't know if you remember the movie Taken with Liam Neeson. And one of the originals, and he says, I don't know who you are. I'm going to try to do my Liam Neeson voice. I don't know who you are. He says, but I have a special set of skills, and I will use them, and I will find you, and I will come get you, essentially. And so I said, I got a special set of skills from this experience. I said, so sure, am I disappointed how this has played out? Am I disappointed with what's been invested versus what's come out of it? Absolutely. But I took those skills and turned that into a multi-million-dollar business. And so it's because I chose not to sit there and be a victim. Like, oh, he promised me this and he promised me that. And they said, okay, oh, that's true. But at the end of the day, that's where it's at. And years later, I remember sitting with that man and running into him. And we said, okay, let's connect and get something to eat. We go to eat, and it's the end of it. And I remember I was a teenager at that time. I just got started earlier, like 16, 17, 18. And It's time to pay. And he says, you got it, right? Because he said he didn't have any money. After we finished the meal, he says, I hate to do this to you, but do you have some money for gas? Um, and I share that story to say, who I thought victimized me years earlier, because I chose to take that and turn that whole situation turned in a whole different direction years later. And it wasn't like I was gloating or looking down on him or anything like that. I remember having a profound sense of gratitude that I took what could have been a victimizing situation and turned it into being a victor. And I think that last question, what are you going to do about it? That's a question everybody's got to ask themselves. What am I going to do about it? Because you can't change what happened. So I need to make it productive. What am I going to do about it?
Hearing you talk about that reminds me of Steve Jobs' commencement speech back in 2005, the one he gave at Stanford. And I'm actually going to post an Instagram reel about this today because I love the speech, but there's a specific part of that speech that I always talk about on this podcast. So if you're a repeat listener, you're like, oh, here goes Nick again talking about the same freaking commencement speech. But there's a part in there where he talks about connecting the dots and how Steve Jobs, I think it was in college, took a calligraphy course. And at the time, he took it randomly. It wasn't out of any necessity. It was just like, I'm going to take this course.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't really assign much meaning to it. He was like, oh, I'm doing this course. I'm learning about these different fonts, but like, I don't think this will ever be useful. Lo and behold, it ended up becoming very useful because he started Apple, and Apple is known, you said you're a pro Apple guy.
Yeah.
Apple is known for these beautiful designs, beautiful fonts, right? Everything is very exquisite, very, very nicely designed. And Steve Jobs attributes that a lot to that calligraphy course that he took back in college. And so he says that to say, you don't often know in the moment, like you can't connect the dots in the moment. You only connect the dots looking back. And so he said, oh, I took this calligraphy course. It led me to this. It led me to that. And now Apple is $1 trillion company.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm interested to hear what you think about this. It seems like a lot of people, myself included, like I'm not singling myself out here, but
Right.
we're so quick to attribute labels to certain things that happen in our lives.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, this is a failure. Oh, this is terrible. Oh, this is really good. Or, oh, this is really bad. And before I get your thoughts, I just really want to quickly interject with this story too. The Chinese farmer, I don't know if you've heard this one, but I'll just paraphrase it real quick. There's this farmer who has a son, and the son goes out into the field and he breaks his leg. And the son goes back to his father and he says, oh, I broke my leg. This is terrible. And the father says, well, let's see what happens. And the next day, the army comes looking for the father's son because they want to enlist him in the army. They need help. And the father says, well, my son can't go into the army. He just broke his leg. And his son says, wow, how lucky am I? I broke my leg the day before and now I don't have to go fight and potentially die, right? So, and essentially the whole story is like situations like that, which seemed terrible in the moment, but actually ended up becoming really good.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think we're too quick to judge certain situations and events in our lives?
Oh, yeah. And I think, you know why? It's because I think most of us have some degree of paranoia. Like things are out, somebody's out, like Michael Jackson always feels like somebody's watching me. Feels like somebody's out to get you. So, right? I have the exact opposite. It's called pronoia. It's an actual state of being. It's a state of mind. For me, it comes from a scriptural place, but it's an actual way to set your mind. Pronoia says that there is a conspiracy, but to do this. Everything, every noun, person, place, thing, or idea are working together in concert without my active knowledge to benefit me. The paranoia says all of those things are working together to, be negative to you, or to be to your detriment. Pronoia says all of these things are working together for my good, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I like to describe it like this. I used to be able to cook really good. Something happened. I used to be able to bake okay. Something happened. I can't cook. I can't bake. So I used to have a sign in my kitchen saying, keep your kitchen clean, eat out. So, but I know enough about baking to know this. You're going to make a cake. All of the ingredients are necessary to produce this, wonderful, scrumptious, delicious cake, right? But oil by itself is gross. I mean, you ever just drank, a vial of oil? That's disgusting. Eggs by themselves. I know a lot of people use it for protein. I don't get it because the texture on that is weird to me, right? But eggs by themselves, I personally think gross. Vanilla by itself has a very off-putting taste to me. The flour by itself, is anybody just, taking some flour, let's have some flour. All of these individual ingredients by themselves are not that great. But when you mix them together, and that's pronoia, when these things come together, they produce something that's much better. And I think I agree with you. We're quick to mislabel, but I think we're quick to mislabel because there is this sense that, see, here's something else going wrong versus here's something else going good. Even if it looks bad, it's working for my good. Even if it doesn't feel good, it's working for my good. That mindset shift, I think, is what's really important. And I've learned to do that. Like, so for example, I remember we were working on a project when we moved our headquarters from Denver to Atlanta. And it was delayed in a way. I'm like, I've never experienced this. I said, I've never experienced this level of delay on a project like this in my life. And I'll be honest with you, I began to get pretty frustrated. I was like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to do this. Well, maybe I need to do something different. And then I had to go back, fix that mindset. Because again, you get to keep 100% of your limiting mindset. I said, well, every delay is to my benefit. So every delay is going to work together for my good. It may not feel good. It may be aggravating because it's a world I'm not used to with a bunch of transition. And everything that didn't work was for our benefit because we would have overpaid, would have been a bad deal. It would have, there's lots of different reasons for each of them. But the point is that relabeling, again, that mindset shift, I think makes the difference. Everybody has got to adopt pronoia because if not, you're going to go through life constantly feeling like, man, I take one step forward and then two steps back. Well, that's because that's how you want to view it. Or you could view it as I'm being properly positioned. Right? It's all your choice.
What would you say to someone who maybe is listening to this, or maybe they come across a clip and they say, this is all fine and dandy, but Bishop Foreman, I have real problems. I'm in huge debt. I can't pay my bills. My wife is divorcing me. My kids hate
Sure.
me. Whatever your issue is, what would you say to someone who may be listening to this, who may have those problems?
I love that. And here's why I say I love that. I know what it is to be there. My first book that I wrote is called Making Money Moves, The Art of Getting Your Finances in Order. So you heard me tell the glory and the highlight reel of building this great successful business. Well, let me tell you the gutter and the story. After building a successful business, opening a brand new office, hiring a ton of people, over the weekend, the industry collapsed. Not just my company, the industry collapsed. It was like dominoes. Every bank that we use, I remember watching it on TV that Saturday. I woke up thinking, oh man, what a great Friday, what a great week. And then I woke up to seeing one of the banks that we utilized basically being shut down. And I was like, well, wait a minute, what's going on? And then it became this cascading thing. And this is way before it hits the broader market in '08. This was, before, which precipitated into that. And so that carnage, it was carnage. I mean, it was literally carnage. Like Friday, you're good. Monday, it's over. And like that quick, like no warning, no, no, decline. No, like Friday, you're on top of the world, figuratively speaking. And then on Monday, there is no world anymore. And I remember going through a sequence of things where, I had to readjust, had to close down offices. I was sending out resumes because, yeah, I said, okay, well, I got to work, right? And so I'm entrepreneurial. So, but every business that I'm, attempting, not working, I remember having to take jobs where, I was on commission and not even commission, what they call draw. I learned something new during that time. I was like, so wait a minute, I got to do all of this just to get this. And then I got to do, I was like, this is crazy. But I had to do all of that. None of that worked because the entire industry was collapsing. Why do I bring that story up? Because I know what it is to be in a valley. And I know what it is to be like, okay, what's going on? So just imagine, I've built a lifestyle that's accustomed to a revenue and an income stream that over the weekend is cut off. I mean, quite literally that way. And I remember going through that valley and I remember saying, and this was a prayer for me. I said, God, if you help me get through this, I will teach everybody everything you teach me. So that's what my first book was about. I bring up that story to say, I know what it is to be in those scenarios where you're like, what's up with this? All right, this is crazy. Like, this is a real deal, Holyfield type problem. What am I supposed to do with them? And all I can tell you is, I'm not just speaking from theory, I'm speaking from experience, that those situations, it's your choice how you navigate through that. I'm not saying it's not going to feel bad. I'm not saying you're not going to have some days where you want to holler, scream, fight, punch, cuss. If you had hair, pull it out. You know, I'm bald, but pull it out. I'm not saying you're not going to have that. But what I am saying is that you get to decide how you're going to walk through that. So I say to that person that says, I got some real problems, I say, I get it. And I'm telling you, these are real solutions to real problems, because life's not going to stop hitting you. You just need to learn how to hit back.
I love that you brought up one of the failures that you had. I mean, mostly out of your
Mhm.
control, right? But I do think that there is this feeling of survivorship bias on social media when it comes to entrepreneurship and when it comes to
Mm.
business.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you see the success stories, and
Yep.
most of the stories that you see are success. You know, started
Yep.
this business, grew it, sold it, made millions, whatever the case may be, whatever
No.
outcome you want. But
No.
what you don't hear a lot about, and what I actually want to start doing more on this podcast, is you don't hear a lot of the failures, and you don't hear a lot of,
Yeah.
hey, I did all the things, like I took all the advice, I worked hard, I did this, I followed all the social media best practices, I did everything, and I
Yeah.
didn't grow, and I didn't sell for $50 million, I didn't
Yeah.
reach my financial dreams.
Yeah.
And the reason why I think it's super useful is because oftentimes we learn. I think Ed Sheeran had said this. I'm forgetting the exact quote. Essentially, right? Everyone's heard it, but we learn a lot more from our failure than we do from our success. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people would learn a lot more from reading about and studying other people's failures than they would just studying the success stories. I think there's obviously positive material, and there's good material in hearing these success stories, but I'd argue there's probably more powerful material if you learn from some of these failures and understanding that success is not guaranteed.
Yeah. Oh, listen, let me be very honest with you. I don't really like hearing success stories. I like hearing the struggle. Because to me, again, it's highlight reel versus practice footage. You're showing me the highlight reel, but I want to see the practice footage where you ran that play 400 times and kept dropping that ball, right? Or kept getting popped. Like, show me that, because it does three things. One, it normalizes my experience. Because you can begin to think like, what's wrong with me? Because I'm not winning like that. Well, neither are they. I mean, just think about social media. You have to pose to post, right?
Mm.
So if you use pose not as a noun, but you use it as a verb, you recognize that like people are showing you what they want you to see, and that's the reality of it. So when I'm teaching, when I'm talking, when I'm doing life, when I'm mentoring, when I'm coaching, whatever, to me it's always important. Like, I want to hear the gutter. Tell me the bad. Tell me the negative. Tell me when you were like, I can't do this. Tell me when you were like, it's not working. Tell me when you were up in the middle of the night because you're like, what's going on? How am I going to take care of this? What am I going to do? Tell me when four banks told you no and you kept knocking on doors. Tell me when you were posting and nobody was reviewing and nobody was watching. You got so frustrated. Don't tell me about your 44,000 video on a plane ride. Tell me for the year and a half you sat at 50,000 followers and you're like, I don't even know what to do. I don't even want to look at Instagram. I don't even want to touch Instagram. Instagram, get away from me. Right? Like, I don't want to do that. Tell me that. And I got tons of different stories I could do and talk about. You know where I learned that from though? My mother. My stepfather was an abuser. He was a womanizer. Lots of things that when you see, you don't, you, a lot of qualities of what not to be. And sometimes the gift we're given in life is not what to do, but who and what not to be. And that's what my stepfather was for me. He was a brilliant man, but he just was an unfocused man. He could sell ice to an Eskimo, and the Eskimo would think he got a good deal on it. He'd be like, this is the best deal I got on ice. Honey, look at the deal we got on ice. Like, it's all for your igloo type of situation. And with that, I saw her navigate through that, fight through that, be resilient through that, push through that, and have great success through that. And so I say to everybody, I think the same thing. That the truth is going back to what's been a recurring theme in this conversation. You get to choose how you're going to conquer. You get to choose how you're going to navigate through those places and spaces, and that's a choice that's yours, and it's in here. It only feels bad in here. It only looks bad in here. It only seems impossible or whatever it might be in here. If you can master the inner me, then there's never going to be a problem conquering any external enemy.
So let's talk about some of those stories then. I mean, you said you had a couple maybe highlighting some of your failures and some of the
Oh
moments where
yeah.
you're down bad. So, I mean, if you don't mind, fire
Oh,
away.
absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah. So here we go. We do a deal. And I mentioned one with the mortgage company. We do that. We do a deal where this was something for one of our organizations. We're getting ready to do a deal, and it was a lease of a pretty substantial space, pretty substantial lease. And we're getting ready to do it, and there begins to be some issues. Long story short, we find out that the owner of that space is like over $1 million past due in taxes. We've already invested tens of $1,000s into the space, and we've already spent, close to $300,000 on equipment and furnishings and all of that. So we find this out like a week or two before we're supposed to move in. And so I'm like, "What is this? Like, what's up? Like, what are we gonna do?" And this is one of those stories that, it's sort of like, on on the fence. What I do. So we talked to one attorney. One attorney says, "Don't do it, Bishop Foreman. Do not move into this space. Just cut your losses and da 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 da." I'm like, go to another attorney. She says, "Do it, and here's your remedies." I learned a lot in that experience. Back to the point of like the calligraphy class and this whole thing, learning from failures, because I felt like a failure. Like, how did I miss this? How are we in this position where you've got this large group of people who are ready to march into this space? Lots of money has already been invested, spent, or committed to be spent. And I got to make this call, and it's a 50-50 flip of a coin. We have no clue. Like in 6 months, all this could just, whatever. And to make it worse, when we began to reach out to the landlord's people, they were just the worst people to deal with. And so we go through that whole journey, and I'm like, okay, well, we're just gonna try. We're just gonna go for it. I'm not just gonna turn out. Well, all I'll say is that particular risk, that gamble, turned out well. It was extremely beneficial for us, extremely lucrative for us. It turned out good. The failure part of it was that I was in a situation where I didn't have control over so many of the levers. And I felt like, well, how did you miss this? I learned so many important things. Like when we do contracts now, we don't have contract lawyers review our contracts. We have litigators review them. We need people to review stuff who know how to sue, right? Because they're going to know how to rip that document apart, not just based on statute, but based on, case law precedent and, what arguments are going to work in front of a court, in front of a judge, that kind of thing. So many things. I think about making a decision. In one particular time, we were doing a new location in Dallas. Deal was negotiated. Everything was the easiest deal I've ever done, to be quite honest. Deal was there. I would do our Sunday mornings. This was a church thing. I would do our Sunday morning service. I get on a plane, fly to do Dallas that evening, and they'd watch me on video for the second service. So we were doing that project. Everything was together. Everything we needed began to line up. Once we start, we have staffing problems. Like all the staff we were supposed to send to Dallas, it was like somebody turned on a switch and they just all, everybody's having emotional breakdowns and all this kind of crazy stuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like we're supposed to start a $300,000 construction project on a Monday. And I got a staff meltdown that's just wild and bizarre. I can't be there to manage the project. The personnel it is just a whole lot of things that were going on. And I said, okay, what am I going to do? And I remembered having to pull the plug on this project, pull the plug on the location, pull the plug on everything that we'd worked so hard to do after spending a bunch. And I was like, this doesn't feel great. This doesn't feel good. But again, I used pronoia. So I said, okay, all of these things are working together for my good. And in that, it felt like a failure. I did a whole series about it. Like, I don't know if you remember back on social media when the big meme that was really popular was keep calm and bounce back.
Yep.
Yep. So I did a whole series on that. And that became my whole thing. Like, just keep calm and bounce back. I was like, you got to bounce back from this. So we bounce back, we recoup everything. And within 15 months, that property had a major catastrophic storm and was completely destroyed. So had we moved forward with that, that would have been us 15 months down the road. So it goes back to my whole thing about pronoia, that wherever I see a failure, if I follow that thing all the way through, it was really doing something that was what I call favor.
One thing that I was thinking about while you were telling that story is I recently came across this video with Bill Ackman. And for those who don't know Bill, he is a pretty prominent hedge fund billionaire, prominent on Twitter X, whatever you want to call it nowadays. And he was asked, or he was essentially telling the story of there was this difficult part of his life. His wife was divorcing him. His hedge fund was down 30%. There was a lot of bad things happening in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And the interviewer asked him, how did you get through that? Like, what mindset did you use? What tactics? And he just said, I just focus on getting 1% better each and every day.
Each and
And
every
that's
day.
it.
Oh,
And I would keep it super simple. He's like,
yep,
okay, today I feel so sad. I feel so down that I can't get out of bed. My
yep.
only goal for today is to get out of bed. And
Gotta
that's
be
it.
in. Yep,
And the next day, I'm going to maybe get out of the house. And the next day, I'm maybe going to call a friend. And the next day, maybe I'll go hang out with that friend outside
yep,
somewhere.
yep,
And he said the beauty in that is we all know and are familiar with compounding and compounding returns when it comes to
yep,
stocks, when it comes to money. But what we don't understand is how powerful it could be for self growth and
yep,
for personal growth.
yep,
And he said the most beautiful part is on a day to day basis, you don't see a lot of change. It's like when you go to the gym, you could go every day for 2 weeks, maybe a month. You probably won't see a lot of change with your body.
yep.
But when you get to the 3, 6, 9 year mark, you're like, wow, I'm a completely different person. And he
Totally
said
different.
it's the exact same thing with personal growth. It doesn't seem like you're making a lot of changes on a day to day basis, but extrapolated over a year, you become this whole different person. And if
Yeah,
you don't trust Bill or if you don't trust what I'm saying, just do the math, right? There's that famous, 1.01 to the power of 365 equals 37.78, meaning if you just become 1% better at something over the course of a year, you become essentially 38 times better at that one thing. So when I hear stories of failure, when I hear stories like you just mentioned and brought up, I just always think back to that and it's like, man, I used to struggle with this too. Like something bad would happen and I would immediately think like I need to get back to the level of happiness I had before this bad thing happened. And it
mm-hmm.
needs to happen immediately. And I need to get
Mm-hmm.
over this immediately. And I
Yeah,
wouldn't give myself that patience to like actually grow and to slowly over time get better. So I bring
yeah,
that up to say like it's the one piece of advice that I always go back to. Like if I'm struggling with something, it's like, all right, let's just take this one step at a time. Like don't try to climb a mountain at, with one lunge. Like do it step by step.
yeah. I say to people and to myself, because I think for most people, if you begin to live life as an expert, that's where the challenge comes in. Is because when something goes wrong because you saw yourself as an expert, now it's completely shattered your paradigm. I live life as a student, and I always notice this about very successful people. They're students.
Mm,
They ask more questions than they give answers. They
mm,
observe more than they speak. There's these traits that follow all very successful, or most, I'm saying all, but most very successful people, however you deem success to be, or you gauge success. And I think that's such a key point in that if you don't take it one step at a time, one day at a time, it feels overwhelming, and that overwhelm feels like defeat. Like I'll never get out of this. And the reality is, you can't even see that daily you're getting out of it. So I often use this phrase: "How do you eat an elephant?" And people will say, like, "What do you mean eat an elephant? Nobody eats elephants." Like that's gross. I said, "But no, you understand the point. It's this big, huge animal. If you were going to eat the elephant, how would you eat the elephant?" And people kind of think about it for a second once they get past the initial shock of the concept of eating an elephant, and they're like, "Well, one bite at a time." So how you eat a hamburger? One bite at a time. How you eat pizza? One bite at a time. I said, if everything in your life is one bite at a time, why do you think this isn't that way? Everything in your life is one step at a time. Everything in your life is one breath at a time. Everything in your life is one at a time. So why then are you putting a pressure on yourself to take leaps and bounds and go from 0 to 100, and everything else in your life is one at a time? And I love what you said, because I think that's the key. Back to your poster back there, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Well, how many shots can you take at a time? One.
dude, I'm gonna write that down, and I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna clip that up, and that's going on my Instagram because that is my new favorite. Wow, that blew my mind. It's
Yeah,
funny, right? Because it's so simple. Like when you
yeah,
say it, like we're not. I mean, I hope you don't take offense to this, but we're not like solving Newton's third law or whatever here,
good,
right? Like
good.
we're not solving the theory of relativity, but like it's so simple, and I think that's why it resonates. Like, for example, what you just said, the one bite at a time.
Yeah.
The fact that it is so simple is why it resonates so deeply, because we can
Yep.
imagine it. Like, we've been there. Like, most of us have eaten a piece of pizza, have eaten a hamburger.
Yep.
Most of us probably have not eaten an elephant, but
Right.
you know that.
Hope not.
Yeah, right. But that's why it resonates so deeply, because it's like, yeah, like you can't eat a hamburger just all in one bite. Like you gotta
No,
work
like,
through it. Yeah.
no, you can't. It's not going to taste good. You're going to get messy. You're not going to be able to eat it all. You're going to waste money. You're going to waste time. You're going to get dirty. And I think the same thing applies when you try to overdo it with life or overdo it with business. I also, I have a lot of opportunities that are always put before me. And so I also do a lot of mergers and acquisitions, buying companies and what have you. And so in that, I get hit with, every morning I wake up to 30 or 40 new deals. And I remember at one point I was saying, this is how I'm having it. And I had to, again, I go back to my own advice because I live as a student, go back to my own principles. Like, okay, you got to do this one at a time. One at a time. When we're dealing with, staffing and culture and people and businesses and buildings, whatever it is, it's one thing at a time. And when you slow down, it really helps you. A lot of people who are especially entrepreneurial, minds move so fast. Like we're doing 40 things at one time. Like you're in a meeting, but you're not in a meeting because you're in the meeting tomorrow because you're thinking about that. And you see a bird fly by, you're like, oh yeah, I need to do this too. Like your mind moves really fast. One of the things I've had to do is slow my mind down to actually do what's in front of me so that I can move on to the next thing. And that's it. It's one bite at a time, one step at a time, one breath at a time, one move at a time, one email at a time, one text at a time. And to your point, before you know it, all of these things have accumulated so that now you've really advanced.
One thing that I've been thinking a lot about is we throw around a lot of these words like patience, consistency, dedication, resilience, especially within the world of entrepreneurship, even the world of athletics and sports. And what I've been trying to understand is like, what do these words actually mean? Like, what does it look like in practice? Like, what does patience look like in practice? What does resilience look like in practice? And so us talking about the one bite at a time reminded me of patience and what we had just talked about. It's like, how would you define patience, like
Yeah.
through action? Like if you saw someone and you're like, that person is patient, how would you describe
Yeah.
them?
I love that question. Patience is the level of endurance your character can take before you become negative while dealing with delay or provocation. So let me shorten that. At what point do you become negative when you're being delayed or provoked? That's where patience ends. Most people I've been waiting on this to happen, but that waiting and patience aren't the same thing. I can wait and be impatient while I'm waiting because I'm negative the whole time. Patience in practice says, okay, this hasn't happened when I want it to happen or when I thought it should happen, when I felt like it should happen. So at what point do I start being negative about it? And that's the point where patience has turned into impatience. And patience is one of those things that, a lot of people, it's a virtue, it's a this, it's a that, it's a that. Let's just face it. We live in a culture where we don't have to be patient for anything. I can open my phone and instantly get anything I want within seconds. So you want me to now go totally different than what my daily life is and wait on something and have a good attitude about it? It's totally contrary to how I've been programmed. However, it is exactly the way that the world works. It's exactly the way that life works. What's resilience look like? I'll go back to that meme. It looks like keep calm and bounce back. Your resilience is your ability to bounce back. It's your ability to take a setback and turn it into a bounce back. Take something that upsets you and turn it into a setup for you. I think about basketball. Now, I can't really hoop on a court. You got to take me to like an arcade and do one of the hoop games. I got you at the arcade. If it's at Dave and Buster's or something like that, I got you. You're not winning that game. I can tell you right now. On the court, you got me all day long. With that, though, think about it. You bounce the ball. The harder you bounce it down, the harder it goes back up, the higher it goes. And I think that principle is true with resilience. Like people are like, oh man, this thing really took me down. Ooh, that's because it's about to really take you up. If you allow it to do that, and all that's been a common thing of what we've been talking about. All of that's predicated on your mindset because you can take that and turn that into something negative, or you can say, you know what? All right, this was a big setback, but I'm going to turn this into a big bounce back. And that's what I've done the entirety of my life. with every business. Relationships go through, I mean, maybe you get divorced, maybe you get dumped, maybe things don't work out, maybe like, oh my God, this is my forever person, and forever turns into like 2 years, or 20 years, which in many ways would feel more difficult, because you've got more time invested. The point is, so what are you going to do about it? Are you gonna bounce back, or are you going to stay down? And here's the thing: staying down for a moment isn't failure. Doesn't make you a weak man. Doesn't make you a weak woman. Doesn't make you a weak person. But choosing to stay down after you have an opportunity to get up, I think that's where the difference makers. That's where the history makers are made. That's where the line crossers, the boundary breakers. That's where you see the differential in people. Is okay. We both got hit, but now what are we going to do about it?
I'm loving these definitions. I'm curious, are there any other words that you've thought about or you've attributed these definitions to?
When I think of patience, I also think of persistence.
Hmm.
Because I think part of when you're being delayed or being provoked, you have to be persistent. like, like if somebody's provoking you, and something is provoking you, there's a persistence you have to have. What's persistence? Persistence says that despite obstacles, I'm continuing to move forward with the same level of intensity as I did before. And that can be a challenge. Like, even in business, if you've had some failed business, I've had some failed businesses. My first business I started as a kid, I was 12 years old, didn't work the way I thought it was going to work. It didn't turn into the major enterprise I thought it would, but it set me up to do that. I had the mortgage company that the industry collapsed when I got out of that, and I was able to get out of that, but not the way that I thought I was going to get out of that. I had to not pursue lots of things, lots of business deals, purchases, acquisitions that you get to the end. I remember sitting at 7 hours at a closing table one day, thinking that this deal is done, to only later on the deal had to be totally unwound and shut down. I was like, I got off a plane, came in here, sat at this table for 7 hours, and you mean to tell me this is what these people are doing? This is what's happening? And so I think of persistence, because that would have been a great time to say, I'm just not gonna do it. I'm over it. I'm done. But you know what I was doing? The very next day, I was like, okay, well, what's next? What's the next door? One more that comes to mind, I think would be, I would say consistency. Consistency is different than persistence in this way. Consistency says, I'm going to do it with the same level of intensity, passion, desire, fire, if you will, that I did yesterday. And consistency is where I think most people, even if they're persistent, sometimes they lack consistency. Because let's use relationships. One of the number one things you hear people say in relationships when they begin to not go in the direction that people want, you changed. What are they really saying? Your consistency is different. We used to do this, now we don't. What are they really saying? Your consistency is different. You used to do, take me here, do this, look this way, dress this way, whatever it might be. What they're really saying is there's a consistency problem that we now have. And I think when you look at the deterioration of a business, and all of a sudden people are doing negative reviews or saying negative things or whatever, what really changed? Consistency. So I think those are a few words that I group together in that family that all really go together.
I'll tell you a problem I used to deal with a lot, and honestly still deal with a little bit to this day. And listen, we're getting better, 1% better every single day.
There you go.
Um, Consistency, and the reason I had such a trouble being or had so much trouble being consistent is because my definition of what it meant to show up day after day consistently was wrong, in my opinion.
Mm,
Because I would say,
mm,
like, take something simple like going for a run.
mhm,
I would tell myself the definition of being a consistent runner is running, I don't know, at least 2 miles a day.
mhm,
And if one day I woke up and I was feeling super tired or something was happening, I just, the energy levels weren't quite there, and I could only run a mile, I would view that as a failure. And
mhm.
I would say, I didn't run the 2 miles I told myself
Yep.
was the definition that I was striving for. Like that was the definition of consistency.
Yep.
Social media is perfect. We talked about it a little bit in the beginning.
Yep.
Some days I post a video and, for some reason, maybe, the words aren't coming as quickly as they normally do.
Mhm.
And I'm like, dang, it didn't really show up today. What I failed to realize is I was still showing up. I wasn't showing up at 100% of what I'm capable of, but I was still showing up. And
Yeah.
there's that famous graph where it's like, there's a glass of water that's full, and then there's a glass of water that's like half full, and then a quarter full.
Mhm.
And it's like, this is all consistent. Like, this is all showing up. It doesn't matter that you're showing up 100% daily. Like, you are showing up in some capacity. So that was a
Yeah.
problem that I used to struggle with a lot, is like, I would view showing up not to my full capacity and potential as a failure.
Yeah. You know what I would throw on that too is I remember, so I've lost like 120 pounds now, something like that.
Wow.
And I would try everything. Slim Fast, Slim Slow, Protein Power, Atkins, eat all the carbs you want, eat no carbs, drink this juice, and in 48 hours you'll be I tried everything. Nothing worked. So like, okay, I need a strategy. I get a strategy. And in fact, I taught a whole masterclass on it. Get a strategy. And one of the things that I was a fast food connoisseur. You tell me the restaurant, I'll tell you exactly which meal I wanted, exactly how I want it prepared. If you said Burger King, I'd say number 6, chop it in half, extra mayo, add onions, fries, and onion rings together with a Coke Zero, because somehow that was going to,
That evens it out.
makes it all, that gets it.
Right.
And that was the thing. This is what it was. And so I had to make a bunch of lifestyle choices. And I remember I made a choice and I went cold turkey, and just made this choice it was not a plan I was given. Back to what we talked about earlier. I just said, okay, stop eating after 6. It was a random time. This is before intermittent fasting was a thing. Like, I'd never even heard that term. Stop eating after 6 because that's not good. Stop eating all this fast food because that's all you eat. It's basically fast food. And a couple other changes. I didn't get into the gym until years and years later. And I would walk, 2-3 times a week, and like 5 miles. I was like, that's my plan, and with a couple of other things. I wasn't into calorie counting. I didn't, there was no chat GPT to help us at that time. There was no apps that, were really good at that. Long story short, to consistency, I made this determination, and I said, all right, every day I have to give everything, and here's the key line, but it goes in line with what you're saying. I have to give everything that I can give to ensuring that I am meeting this goal. And the immediate goal was, you cannot be an unhealthy leader, because most leaders set themselves on fire to keep everybody else warm. They don't take care of their health. Don't care that, they've abandoned themselves for the mission, for the cause, for the people, for this. Now, that's not all. I mean, obviously we live in a culture where there's some people who don't do that, but that wasn't me. And so with that commitment to consistency, I did that. And before you know it, so that was 2013 when I started that. So here you are 13 years later. I've eaten fast food 2 times in that 13 years. And one time was because a friend of mine said, you got to try this particular restaurant. And once I tried it, I said, I am so mad that you had me to try this and do this fast food, because this was not good. The other time was to get some nuggets from this particular place. But so I'm on the fence about whether or not I'm going to consider that fast food, since it's grilled nuggets. The point is this, is I made the decision to consistently show up and give it everything that I had. And I think sometimes one of the things that we have to be careful to do is, one, show up with everything that we've got, but then 2, not lie to ourselves about what we can give and what we can do. Because there would be days I do not feel like, once I got into the gym, I did not feel like going to the gym today. But I was like, but the truth is, you gave everything else 100%. Why not give you 100%? Why not give you your all? And so I think that's an important consideration too, is because sometimes we are the masters at manipulating ourselves and telling ourselves, I can't. I don't feel like it. I don't want to. I'm unable to. And sometimes you just, back to that whole 1%, if you just push yourself just a little bit, pull yourself just a little bit, inspire yourself just a little bit, before you know it, what was difficult last month becomes lifestyle this month.
Give 100% of what's available today, not
Yeah.
100% of perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
I was
exactly.
looking for that quote because I saw it on Twitter the other day, and I was like, that quote literally described my issue and why it was so difficult for me to remain consistent, because I was trying to give 100% of perfect each and every day. And no matter what, the success gurus and entrepreneur gurus are going to tell you on Instagram and TikTok, that's not possible. Like, we're humans. you're not going to be able to give 100% of perfect every single day. So
Right.
that was a huge reframe for me, and honestly has helped me. Like even now, like when I go on runs, I'm like, okay, well, you know, if I feel like I still try to push myself, but some days I'm
Yeah.
just like, you know what, like maybe I don't have time, maybe something else happened, I just can't run my normal mileage.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I'm gonna just go out and run whatever I can, and that will be
Yeah.
that for the day, and that's it.
Yeah. 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 And again, that's still progress.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's still
Yep.
something to be celebrated. Absolutely.
Kevin, a couple more questions here to round us out, and then we'll let you go. This has been a fantastic conversation. I've certainly learned a ton, and you're obviously, I don't think I'm breaking any news here, but you're a very well spoken man and very intelligent. So I appreciate you coming on again.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
I'm curious, is there any advice that you think is severely underrated or doesn't get talked about nearly enough?
I would say, and we've hit it a bit already, the proper expectations of the process and the path to success, and however success is defined. If you only define success as money, I'm here to tell you you're broke. I don't care how much money you have. And as a man who is very blessed, I don't care how much money you have. If that's all you're defining success as, one, you've already got a detriment. That's a poverty mentality. Because there's so much more to life than money. Money's a tool. It's a resource. It's not the end within itself. I get this to do that. And I think that path to whatever people define success as is often articulated in a way that makes people believe. Like I literally saw this on Instagram, and they were saying, follow these 5 steps, for, they're basically saying for real estate investing. I was like, okay, but none of that, that's not real though. I said, you're missing the fact that to get to that one thing you're talking about, they're gonna have to call like 100 people to get that. That's 100 calls. So somebody's reading that and they're thinking, oh, if I just join this community and if I just, get this script and I just do that, man, I'm gonna be cashing checks. And sure, it's possible, but there's a process and there's a path there. So I think it's underrated what that path and that process look like. And that doesn't mean everything has to be hard, but nothing is just handed to you. I think that's an important consideration. I think one of the other things I think goes underrated is the importance of alignment. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. Whenever your car is out of alignment, the tires don't wear right. They wear too fast. And you'll see parts of them where they're, balding, they're not doing well. When your body's not in alignment. I remember years ago going to a chiropractor, not because I had an accident or anything. I'm infatuated with keeping myself at my healthiest. That's something I'm infatuated with, and I use that word infatuated on purpose, because if I'm not my best, then how am I helping anybody else if I'm not my best? So I go to the chiropractor. He shows me this thing. He says, Bishop, he says, I want you to see this chart. He shows me this chart, and he says, everything's good. He says, but there's some of the cartilage and some of your upper vertebrae. He says, they were like flashing, green. And he said, it's nothing major. He said, but you need some minor adjustments because the misalignment in those areas, they have what's called global effects in your body. So he gives me this list of things. And it includes tiredness and it's this whole list of things that you'd never ever associate. These things have like allergies, certain allergies. You never ever associate that symptom or that fruit with that root of having some misalignment, and it predicated upon how high or how low it is, whatever, C this, C1, whatever the vertebrae is. It's determinative of what it can do in your body. And I think for many people, there is this talk about acquisition. There's this talk about achievement, but there's very little talk about alignment. Just because I can do this doesn't mean I should do this, and doesn't mean that it aligns with who I am, where I am, what I'm supposed to do.
What are your thoughts on hustle culture?
That thing means a lot of different things. Give me more context how you define it, and then I'll give you my thoughts on it.
I will give you the super controversial, like I've seen it. It's been popular on social media, but just the maniacal focus, like ignore all else, work 18 hours a day, nothing else matters, right?
Mhm.
Like obviously I'm taking it to the extreme, but I have
Yeah.
seen this advice online where it's like, if you want success, if that's what you're chasing, this is the mindset that you need to have.
I say this. I say I think there's two extremes. I think most people are extremists. Like people are all the way over here and they're all the way over there. And the truth is the answer is like somewhere in the middle between the two. That's the reality. And I do think that many people are lazy. And many people's mentalities are, I'll get to it tomorrow. It's 5:15. I want to enjoy my life. Okay, well then don't complain about the quality of life you have if that's your mentality. If you want to be done at 5:15, be done at 5:15. If you want to be done at 2 o'clock, be done at 2. But don't complain about the results you're getting if that's the effort you're willing to input. To the inverse of that, to the person that says, you know what, I woke up and got up at 6. It's 11:30 that night, and I'm grinding, I'm hustling, I'm hustling. Okay, but then don't complain that you're not actually enjoying the things that you're getting. So to me, it's pick your hard. Every decision's hard. You need to pick yours. So for me, I know what it is to be on the side of that where now I wasn't to that extreme, but to the side of it where, sun up to sundown, I'm doing what I got to do. Here's what it is. We're done when we're done. And I think that is that contributed. I absolutely believe that mentality contributed to many successes. On the flip side, after you build and you do certain things, then I shifted my mentality. I said, you know what? I only want to work up to this time in the day. So anything else, anything y'all can't fit in my day by this time, it has to go to the next day because I want to enjoy life. I like to be outside. I like to do the things that I like to do. And so I don't think that either extreme is right or wrong. I think it's person dependent. But I also think whatever you pick, don't be mad about the unintended consequences of that. If you're going to work all day, you're not going to enjoy your stuff. If you're not going to work, then you're not going to have stuff to enjoy. So you need to pick your heart.
That's so well said. And it reminds me, I just had Gannon Baker on the podcast, and he is a well-known basketball skills trainer. He trained LeBron, late great Kobe Bryant, Steph Curry. He's worked with all the greats in the NBA. And I asked him a similar question. I'm like, what are your thoughts on hustle culture? Like, we brought up a couple aspects of like Mamba mentality that is super popular. And he said, you know what, Nick, to be honest with you, whatever works for you. Like, you do you.
Yeah.
Some people like Kobe Bryant, obviously a lot of respect to Kobe, but he was very focused. He had one goal in mind. He was like, I'm going to give this basketball thing my all. Like, it's going to be my life.
Yeah.
And you have other NBA players who are like, yeah, basketball is great. Like, I think of like a Jokic, right? Like, everything we hear in social media about him is like, yeah, basketball is great, but I also like to do these other things. Like, I love horse racing. Like, I love all these like random activities. And he's like, pick what works for you, because everyone's different.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, there's people who can work all day, exactly to what you just said, from sun up to sundown, and they're great and they're fulfilled. And,
Yeah.
or maybe it's just a choice that they made and they're like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice other things, and that's working for them. Great. You have other people that, like, I remember, I think it was Mark Randolph, one of the co-founders of Netflix. He was like, I had a rule every Tuesday. My work was cut off at 5 p.m. and Tuesday after 5 was dedicated entirely to my wife.
Yeah.
And that was, we both knew it. Tuesday after 5 p.m. This is our time.
Yeah.
I don't care if the company is on fire. I don't care if everything is burning down to the ground. I am not looking at email. I'm not looking at my phone. Like, this is my time with her. And that worked for him. So maybe it's a day out of the week, right? That you rest. Maybe it's 2 days. Maybe to your point, maybe every day is like, okay, after 5 p.m., I don't want to hear a peep about work. It's your choice. But I like the fact that you bring up, know that the choice you make has consequences, and
Absolutely.
be okay with it, and don't complain about it.
No, don't complain about it because it's your choice. Pick your heart. And I think that recognize, because then it becomes, that's why it's so much, well, is this right? Is this wrong? Is this right? Is this wrong? It's not that. It's just that every choice is going to have a heart to it. So you just need to pick your heart, choose your heart, and be okay with that. Because again, I remember, when people would say to me, Bishop, you're a workaholic. And I said, well, but you don't understand what I'm working toward, what I'm doing. I said, I'm not a workaholic. I said, a workaholic means you can't stop. I can stop. I'm choosing not to stop because I've got the focus, the energy, the passion, da, 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 da. And then, there'll be times where I hear people say, so when do you work? What do you do? And I said, well, listen, I knew that I wanted to front load my effort. And just like a mortgage, right? With a mortgage, you pay most of your interest on the front end, and then everything else is principal. I front loaded my efforts, my energy, my time, so that I could build a life that I could do what I wanted to do. I could build a life that I can decide, this is what I want to do today. This is what I want to do today. I want to do this. I made those decisions to do that. And so that works for me. To somebody else, they don't do that. They want to, they want to do it on the back, whatever. Just know that whatever you're going to do, pick your heart.
Bishop, I got one last question for you.
Yes, sir.
And
What you
then
got?
I'd love to plug some of your books and other stuff that you have going on. If you could rent out a billboard and only put one message on the billboard, what message are you putting on there?
You have a pulse, there's still a plan. Life's not over. If you're still breathing, there's still something you got to do. That's it. That's the message. And you know what? It's in that black and white, classic, black background, white words, so you see it from everywhere. You have a pulse, there's still a plan. Life's not over.
I love that. And I think it when I hear that quote, it obviously resonates with me, but I think it goes back to a lot of the conversation that we had where we view these certain situations in our lives as life or death.
Yeah.
And that phrase gets thrown around a lot. When it really shouldn't be. To your point, if you have a pulse, if you're still breathing, you still got a shot.
Yeah.
And no matter the situation, like we were talking about it before, right? Like there are circumstances, there are scenarios where life hits you hard, and there are a lot of people struggling in this world. And if we had a magic wand and we could fix all of the world's issues with one swing of the wand, we would. But I think if you're in a situation where you are down bad and life seems to not be working out for you, just know if you're alive, if your heart's beating, you still got a shot. That's why I love that message, because it gives you hope. It gives you the sense that I can turn things around, and ultimately there are things that you can do. There are things in your control that you can do to make a better life for yourself and for others.
Yeah. Let me throw out an unpopular opinion, but it connects to one of the books. I did a book called Evolutionaries, and it talks about the life cycle of the butterfly. And the butterfly starts as small as a sesame seed on a sesame seed bun. Stage 2, it grows to 100 times its size. It's what we know as the caterpillar. Stage 3, something crazy happens. It gets in a chrysalis, and it is now either buried underground or behind the leaf. As short as 2 weeks, as long as 2 years, often predicated and postulated by many scientists based on how big it'll become. So they said the bigger you're going to become, the longer you have to be buried, or the longer you have to be behind this leaf. Then it gets to stage 4. Stage 4 is interesting because there's nobody there to help the butterfly break out of the chrysalis or the cocoon. And if anybody helps the butterfly break out, the butterfly's wings will not have the strength necessary for the butterfly to fly. We see a similar thing in the life of a chick. We see the similar thing in the lives of many reptiles. Similar things in the lives of many birds of prey. What's the principle? Nature is showing us something about ourselves. That the reality is some of those things that we sometimes feel like this is such a struggle. It's giving you strength that you need to operate at the next level of life. And that goes back to that pronoia. But I wrote a book called Evolutionaries because that's the butterfly's evolutionary cycle. You and I go through the same thing where we're evolving. And the thing I love about evolution versus revolution is change, but that doesn't always mean change for the better. In fact, a revolution just means circle. Evolution is a line. I can never go back to who or what I used to be. That butterfly, once it's flying, never goes back into the cocoon. It never goes back into the ground. It never goes back to being a caterpillar. And I know for many, that's an unpopular opinion, because one of the things you mentioned was a lot of people struggling. And that's true. And I don't say that to demean that. I'm not detached from that. Again, I know what it is to walk through the valley of the shadow of death and walk through fiery situations and circumstances and think like, this is it. My life's over. What am I going to do? But I also know that it was those struggles that gave me the strength to push through. So I wrote a book about it called Evolutionaries. That talks about that, like your evolutionary process, and so many others that people can check out at bishopforeman.com. And something we're doing special for your audience, just to sow into the lives of people who connect with you. If they text the word Bishop to the phone number 55498. We want to give them a discount off of everything in our store. And just there's tons of great materials, mindset stuff, there's spiritual stuff, there's motivational stuff, inspirational stuff, business stuff. I did a whole thing called How to Build a Successful Business or Organization from Scratch. It's the formula I personally use multiple times to build great businesses, nonprofit and for-profit businesses, whatever you want to do. So tons of stuff that we've got available. But I just had to throw that in there because sometimes that's an unpopular opinion like this. Let's stop struggling. But if you stop struggling, people are going to stop flying too.
I love that. And I mean, that is just the perfect way to end this podcast with that message. Bishop, one more time for the people in the back. Where can people find you and more of your work?
Yes, sir. www.bishopforeman.com. On social media at Bishop Foreman. If you're watching and something was said that added value to your life, I'd love to hear you. Shoot me a DM. It's me actually responding. That takes me several days to respond because I get like 300 or 400 messages a day, but it takes me a minute, but it's actually me responding. I'd love to know how your life was impacted and value was added to your life. And then if you text the word Bishop to the phone number 55498. So it's a short code, 5 digits, 55498, and text the word Bishop. You'll get a code. It'll come right to you. Books, inspirational stuff, things that'll add value to your life. That's what I'm all about, is adding value to the lives of people. It's literally written into my notes. And I encourage everybody to do this. Like, why am I here? Because that's always the question. What am I here? What's my purpose? It's written into my notes. Anything that changes the lives of people is a green light, unless I get a red light. Other than that, I'm on go. Like all gas, no brakes. Or since I'm in the EVs these days, all pedal.
There you go.
All pedal. Right?
Bishop, you've certainly added a ton of value to my life. I mean, this conversation alone, I say to a lot of my guests, because I do believe a lot of the conversations I have are great. I'm a little delusional in that, but this is one of my favorite conversations that I've had up to this point. I mean, it's been so great just hearing you talk and the advice that you've given. Like I honestly felt like at times I was part of the audience watching this and being like, oh, that is a great point. Like I took notes. I was writing down notes and questions. And so this has been fantastic. If you resonated with what Bishop said, if you go check out his social media, all those links will be in the description of this episode. All his books will be there as well. I'll put the reminder to text Bishop to 55498 if you like a discount to some of his work. Highly suggest you go check out Bishop's stuff on Instagram specifically. I think Instagram is your biggest social media.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. I actually didn't know, Katrina reached out to me and she was like, hey, would you like to have him on your podcast? And I went back and I looked at some of your content. I was like, I mean, this is perfect. So Bishop, this has been a fantastic conversation. I can't thank you enough for your time. You've blessed us with an hour and 22 minutes. And if you're up for it, I'd love to have you back on for a part 2 at some point.
Absolutely. Listen, we're connected, so you can't get rid of me. We'd love to.
Bishop, thanks again and all the best.
Thank you. Appreciate it.